It was a chilly evening in late autumn, the kind that made the air smell faintly of rain and wood smoke. The city streets were quieting down after the rush hour chaos, and on the corner of Maple Street, a small coffee shop glowed like a beacon in the dimming light. Inside, the warm hum of soft music and the smell of freshly ground coffee beans wrapped around you like a blanket. The place was never too crowded at night, just a handful of regulars who came for their late fix of caffeine or a peaceful space to think. Mia had worked the night shift for almost 2 years now. She liked the quiet hours. They gave her time to breathe, to watch people without rushing, to notice the little details most people missed. She knew the regulars well. The exhausted students hunched over laptops, the insomniacs staring into space, the dreamers who scribbled in notebooks with faraway eyes. But there was one customer who stood out not because he tried to, but because he didn't. He came in every night without fail, almost like clockwork, just before closing time. He always ordered a black coffee, no cream, no flavors, just a small spoonful of sugar, which he never requested but always stirred in without comment. And he always sat at the same table by the window, the one with the best view of the quiet street. From the first time Mia saw him, she sensed there was something different about him. He was tall, with a quiet sort of presence that drew your attention without demanding it. His clothes were expensive but understated, his dark hair neatly combed, his shoes always polished. But what she noticed most was his face, not the sharp lines or strong jaw, but his eyes. They were the kind of eyes that seemed to carry stories, ones filled with both love and loss. She could tell that behind the calm expression, there was an ache he didn't show the world. At first, she said little to him beyond the usual greetings. "Good evening. Here's your coffee. Have a nice night." But over the weeks, she found herself watching him from the counter, noticing how he lingered over his cup, how his gaze often drifted to the door as though he was expecting someone to walk through. Every time the door didn't open, there was the smallest shift in his expression, a faint shadow that crossed his features before he looked back at the street. She didn't ask. Some people wore their silence like armor, and she respected that, but she wondered. What Mia didn't know was that his name was Daniel Hart, and outside the walls of this little coffee shop, people saw him as something completely different. In the glossy pages of business magazines, he was the CEO of Hartwell Industries, a billionaire with a reputation for ruthless efficiency and an empire built on hard work. He was photographed at charity galas, business conferences, and in the company of politicians and celebrities. But none of those images showed the truth. Daniel was a father, one who had lost his way. 3 years earlier, his wife, Emily, had died suddenly in a car accident, and his world had fallen apart. She had been his anchor, the one who reminded him to slow down, to enjoy the moments, to love without keeping score. Her absence had left him adrift, and his grief had swallowed him whole. Their son Ethan had been just 8 years old when it happened, a bright and joyful boy who suddenly had to navigate a world where his mother was gone, and his father was a shadow of himself. Daniel had thrown himself into work, convincing himself that building a stronger future for Ethan was the best way to honor Emily. But in truth, he didn't know how to face the boy without feeling the crushing weight of everything he had lost. Ethan now lived most of the time with Daniel's sister Claire, because Daniel's schedule was too busy. That was the excuse he told himself. The truth was more complicated. He was scared. Scared that he couldn't give his son what he needed. Scared that he had already failed. The office became his refuge, the boardroom his escape. But there were nights when the loneliness was too much, when the apartment felt like a silent prison. One of those nights, months ago, he had wandered into the coffee shop on Maple Street. He had chosen the place at random, drawn by the soft yellow light spilling onto the wet pavement. Inside it had been warm and quiet, the air smelling of cinnamon and fresh bread. And there had been Mia, with her easy smile and a warmth in her voice that had nothing to do with customer service training. She hadn't recognized him, hadn't cared who he was. She had simply poured him a coffee, placed it on the counter, and gone back to wiping tables. It had been exactly what he didn't know he needed, a place where he could just be a man drinking coffee, not a CEO with headlines following him. So he came back the next night. And the one after that. Over time it became a ritual. He didn't know why, but that 30 minutes with a cup of coffee in the quiet corner of the shop made the rest of the day a little more bearable. Mia never pried, but she remembered his order, added that spoon of sugar he liked, and always greeted him like she was genuinely glad he'd come. It was a small kindness, but it mattered more than she could guess. Weeks turned into months. Their exchanges were polite, brief. But sometimes when the shop was nearly empty, Mia would catch a glimpse of something in his eyes. A question maybe, or the urge to say something he kept inside. And then one night, she decided to break the invisible wall between them. It was late, the rain tapping against the windows, the air heavy with the smell of coffee. Daniel was the only customer left. Mia was wiping down the counter when she glanced up and saw the weariness in his face. "Long day?" she asked gently. He hesitated, his hand still around the coffee cup. "Every day is long," he said finally, his voice low. She smiled faintly. "Well, coffee doesn't judge how tired you are. It just listens." He looked up, surprised into a small chuckle. "I suppose that's true." That small moment opened a door. Over the following weeks, their conversations grew, though still guarded. He told her he had a son but didn't see him much, without explaining why. She told him about her own life, that she had left college to care for her sick mother, that she worked nights to cover medical bills. She spoke with honesty without self-pity, and he respected that. Then came the night that changed everything. It was one of the coldest evenings of the year, the wind howling outside. Daniel walked in later than usual, his shoulders tense, his expression heavy. Mia could sense it before he said a word. She poured his coffee, brought it over, and instead of returning to the counter, she sat down across from him. "You don't have to tell me," she said softly, "but I can see when someone's holding too much in." He stared at the dark surface of his coffee, silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "I don't know if my son even needs me anymore," he said. "I've missed so much. Birthdays, school plays, all the little things. I tell myself I'm doing it for him, for his future. But what if I'm just avoiding the pain of remembering what we lost?" Mia's heart ached at the honesty in his words. "Maybe the future you're building," she said slowly, "isn't worth anything if you're not in his present." Her words hit him harder than he expected. That night, after leaving the coffee shop, he couldn't sleep. He kept hearing her voice, kept seeing the look in her eyes. The next morning, he picked up the phone and called Claire. "Can I pick Ethan up from school today?" he asked. When Ethan came running out of the school gates, his face lighting up at the sight of his father, something inside Daniel cracked open. They spent the afternoon together. Pizza for lunch, kicking a ball in the park, talking about superheroes and school projects. No business calls, no distractions, just a father and son. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt like he belonged in his own life again. From that day forward, he began to change. He still came to the coffee shop, but not every night. Some evenings he was at Ethan's soccer practice, or helping with homework, or just sitting on the couch watching movies. When he did come, Mia noticed the difference immediately. His smile was easier, his eyes lighter. Months later, he finally told her the truth, that he was Daniel Hart, the CEO everyone read about, the billionaire whose face was in magazines. He expected surprise, maybe even discomfort. But Mia only smiled. "I figured you were someone important," she said. "But to me you're just Daniel, the man who likes his coffee black with a little sugar." And that, he realized, was exactly what he wanted to be. So if you're hearing this, remember, success means nothing if you're too busy to be there for the people who matter. And sometimes the smallest kindness, a smile, a cup of coffee, a moment of listening, can change someone's life in ways you may never know. If you believe in stories of kindness, second chances, and the quiet ways we can change the world, hit the like button and subscribe to Everyday Grace Stories. Because the truth is, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you can't see. And sometimes, all it takes to make a difference is being there.